Başlattım ben şimdi.
A good day from Geneva to everyone. I'm Hari Tulsidas. I'm with Charlotte from Geneva, welcoming you to the last final session of the UNECE Resource Management Week 2021. We had a week of exciting discussions, presentations, which will be now concluded by this panel, which will be discussing a series of case studies on applying UNFC to various resources in Europe. And this session is jointly organized by UNECE and EuroGeoSurveys. Some housekeeping first. This session is being recorded. The session will have simultaneous interpretation into English, French, and Russian. Please select your channel from the menu at the bottom of the screen. Participants can provide your comments and questions in the chat box. We will try to answer as many questions as possible as time allows. If any participant wants to speak, please raise your hand and the moderator or the chair will decide to provide you the floor depending on the time available. You can also mail your comments via email to reserves.energy@un.org. We will put it on the chat. The presentations and the recordings will be uploaded to the website shortly, and you will also be able to view it and download it from there. So with that, I will now hand over to the chair of this session, David MacDonald, who is also the chair of the expert group on resource management. Dave, please.
Great. Thank you very much, Harry. Can you all hear me?
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay, super. Okay, great. So this workshop is on UNFC in action, progress towards a modern view on integrated resource management. The UNFC has made great progress in Europe, really quite rapid progress. And traditionally, Europe, like many places in the world, has used multiple systems for their resource management. But with active support of the European Commission, a unified and harmonized reporting of resources is beginning to take shape across the continent. Guidelines for UNFC application in the Nordic countries were developed a number of years ago, and this last year, Finland has developed national guidelines for its reporting. We're also progressing towards a UNFC Europe guidance document. As I said, there are many different UNFC initiatives going on in Europe now, and it would be impossible to discuss all of these in a single 2-hour session. So what we have today is a snapshot, a quick journey, as it were, through a number of the key projects being undertaken today. I'm going to hand over now to Slavko Solar, who is Secretary General of the EuroGeoSurveys, to take the session forward. Slavko has long been engaged with the work of the expert group on resource management and is a great friend and supporter of the UNFC and the work we do. So with that, I'll please hand over to Slavko to moderate this session.
Thank you, David. Thank you. Thank you for the kind words as well. It is my honor to moderate the workshop UNFC in Action, Progress Towards a Modern Review on Integrated Resource Management. a jointly organized workshop between UNSC and EGS. I would like to say a few words on EGS. This year is the 50th year of its existence. EGS is the Association of European Geological Surveys, 38 members, more than 10,000 people working for, almost 2,000 peer-reviewed publications per year, more than 450 experts in the different expert groups of EuroGeoSurveys. One of the expert groups is also the expert group on mineral resources, where most of the participants are coming from. At the present, and you would see through the presentations, most of the presentations are also the outcomes of the current ongoing ERANET project called GeoEra, a research program of EuroGeoSurveys. And that would end this year. And with the next year, just a bit of look in the future, we are hoping to start establishing geological service for Europe, which would have a very strong UNFC and UN Sustainable Resource Management component as well. So I would stop at this point and give the word to the first speaker. I believe that would be Zoltan Horvat, who is also EGS representative at the UN expert group on resource classification, a member of Hungarian survey, as well as co-author Daniel Oliveira, the chair of the mineral resource expert group of EGS, and coming from the Portugal surveys. So Zoltan, I believe the floor is yours.
Thank you, Slavko, and thank you for the opportunity and the excellent organization of this UNECE week. Now I try to share the screen. Can you see? Can you see this?
Yes, that's fine.
Yes,
That's
yeah.
fine, Zoltan. Yes.
Thanks. So, ladies and gentlemen, with Daniel Oliveira in this presentation, a brief summary will be provided on the EuroGeoSurveys activity with UNFC, and some chapters from the future plan will also be introduced. With the global increase of raw material consumption, there is a growing need for standardized decision support tools for sustainable resource management, both at global and EU levels. This trend was also recognized by the European Geological Surveys, that is a community and the main data provider handling geoscientific and raw material data, including statistical and spatial data, and EGS supports the development and use of UNFC. The community of European National Geological Surveys is working on the development of geological service for Europe that is based on 3 pillars. The first is the research with joint earth scientific projects, including raw materials and all types of earth resources. The infrastructure helps to get knowledge and information on raw materials to stakeholders in the raw material community, including industry, research and innovation, the society, the European Commission. The third one is the outreach, that is the sharing of knowledge and infrastructure. EGS as the community of European Geological Surveys deals with all types of earth resources and provides expertise and data to solve today's earth-related challenges. The cooperation is confirmed in the Memorandum of Understanding between the UNECE that will be continuous in the next years. One of the most important programs in the EGS is the GeoEra program that facilitates the use and promotion of the UNFC. With many projects, it is about establishing the European Geological Surveys research area and to deliver a geological service for Europe. Based on EGS and other national and international activities, it is well seen that most European countries have experience with UNFC. Most countries map the opportunity for harmonization and use of UNFC, and concrete case studies for all types of minerals are available on the UNECE and other EU-funded project web pages. Additional case studies will be published in the Mintel4EU in order to demonstrate the applicability and the benefits of using the UNFC. Good summaries on experience with UNFC are available from Scandinavia, from Poland, from Czech Republic, and from Hungary, and more case studies are published in different EU-funded projects. One is the ORAMA. The UNFC is in the legislation in Romania since 1998 and in Hungary since 2020. The ORAMA project, led by the Geological Survey of Finland, was a milestone dealing together with international standards and UNFC classification in Europe in inspired compliant environment for primary and secondary raw materials. Besides important report on the recent situation, flowchart for UNFC categories by the British Geological Survey and recommendations for data optimization can be found on the ORAMA webpage. You can find additional cases and training materials for Norway and United Kingdom on the webpage of the project. Regarding Mintel4EU project, it is led by the Danish Geological Survey and aims to improve European knowledge base on raw materials by updating the electronic mineral yearbook. UNFC as a classification tool is tested via many cases from European regions. In order to develop the pan-European mineral inventory, Mintel4EU web service is linked to the former Minerals4EU database and aims to have a transparent, well-structured data service with proper information that is easy to use. In the next period, in the frame of the European Commission Coordination Support Action, the EuroGeoSurveys plans to improve the Geological Service for Europe and to establish the International Center of Excellence. Three main objectives are to promote and support UNFC and UNRMS, and EU-level data management for earth resources, and of course, policy support. Main objectives are production of data for primary and secondary raw materials, operating infrastructure, implementation of UNFC, improvement of knowledge base, increase of the degree of harmonization, and operating the European geodata infrastructure, which is called EGDI. Regarding the future plan with UNFC, it would be implemented in 5 steps. According to the baseline assessment in 2022, a joint methodology would be developed with the proper guidance to ensure the full implementation of the UNFC in EU, and supported by EGDI that will be fully compatible with RMIS, so the Raw Material Information System, operated by the Joint Research Center. And the visualization and access to data, the EGS will demonstrate an operating system. As a summary, it is still a favorable time period and historical chance to strengthen cooperation between players for full implementation of the UNFC for primary and secondary raw materials in the frame of the new EU Coordination Support Action and in the Geological Service for Europe. The Memorandum of Understanding between UNECE and EGS will have a streamlined period based on more experience, case studies, and future program planned for 2022 and 2026. EU project dealing not only with minerals, but geoenergy, groundwater, will have stronger cooperation with building the European geodata infrastructure in the frame of Geological Service for Europe. Data and experience will be interoperable into the raw material information system that will allow to compare national, regional, and EU-level data sets, and in global context as well, supporting the decision-making. So this is the future plan, and thank you for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you, Zoltan. Thank you. Would we have any urgent question? If not, we could move to the next presentation. Antje Wittenberg would be presenting UNFC and UNRMIS in a spotlight of GeoEra perspective. Antje is a member of German Geological Survey, as well as raw materials theme coordinator within the GeoEra projects. Antje?
Thank you. I hope you can see the presentation in the right mode.
If you can change it to
it's always the same. One second. I need to come into the
go to the top middle. Yeah.
The top is hidden. That's the problem.
You go from
now it should be the right one, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. Correct. Thanks a lot. Thanks also for the patience. Dear participants, dear chair, dear host, thanks a lot for this kind of opportunity to talk about some aspects in relation to the UNFC, the UN Resource Management system, and the work done within GeoEra. Certain aspects you already have heard by Zoltan, but let me go in a little bit more detail. What about GeoEra? So first of all, GeoEra is a network project that brings together 47 national and regional geological surveys. So these surveys are from 32 different European countries. The project started in 2018 and will end this year, as Slavko already mentioned. It's organized by 15 scientific projects structured in 4 thematic themes, namely groundwater, geoenergy, raw materials, and the information platform, which brings the informations together. We are working towards one goal in common in these themes, the optimal use and management of the subsurface. Thus, GeoEra efforts are closely related to the work of the UNSC, and let me provide you some more insights to that. The UNFC application domains, water, energy, might be renewable or might be fossil. Minerals are key domains for GeoEra as well. It is also a crucial information for any underground storage and hence strongly related, while linked to almost all UNFC domains as well. Moreover, reliable, coherent, and accessible data and information are required in all these domains. The UNFC and the URMS are tools that help to visualize and to communicate these complexity. Yet, we need to focus on specific aspects in these GeoEra themes. With a focus on the theme raw materials, let me briefly indicate how we are going to realize these issues and how we are going to, or how we are already working towards the UNFC and the UNRMS in detail. So what we are doing is working together on a mutual understanding of these projects, which is already also organized in 4 different projects, namely Eurolitus, Mintel4U, Mintacine, and Frame. All these projects are working towards a mutual understanding, also on vocabularies, test showcases, and delivers on harmonized information, including thematic maps. As such, it accumulates expertise of regional knowledge and information across the countries. It builds on former projects such as the ORAMA, and it builds on the strong network of excellence complied by the European Geological Surveys in Europe. So let me be a bit more precise within the project themselves. As the Geological Survey organizations, we are the geoscience branch the geoscience branch of the public bodies, and mainly working at the very end of the value chain where business cases are very limited. The science-driven, unbiased research and investigations can well be highlighted by by all of the GeoAreas projects, but in particular here with the marine project Might the Sea, where method and model development, that is also something which paves the way for some more technical innovations, is key for assessing critical raw materials and allow forecast for the resource potential in the marine environment. Due to the continuity of science, including revisiting of sites, monitoring of the environment allows to generate fundamental information required also for the G communicated via the RMS system. That is something what we also continue to do, or even more in detail on land, what we are doing in the marine environment at a greater level of detail, also by considering the potential of historical mining residuals. Those might offer critical raw materials which have never been used before, let's say, the 50s of the last centuries. And therefore, the long history of Europe in mining might have still some interesting sources to provide. This work has led, for example, also to favorable maps shown here on the example of lithium. Those types of information are crucial step for decision-making and land use planning, and also prior to heavy investments, might it be on drilling or might it be to identify potential areas for research and innovations in many other areas as well. The UNFC seems to be the only system that meets concerns which are also of societal importance. Might it be the example of workforces or the example of cultural heritage sites? How the UN system can be used for the important resources that are not top candidates for the capital markets, and hence where the classical codes and report systems often not apply or are not widely in place, is something which is tested by Eurolithos. And it will be presented a bit later by Kari Asli. Last but not least is our flagship project with regards to the UNFC, the Mintel4EU, aiming to provide a minerals intelligence for Europe that includes inventories and information of interest to the economy, as well as information that are of interest to the public in general. This is the most natural project to study the applicability of the UNFC. It takes advantages of Europe's long and very individual developed history, as it was in the incoming words by Dave already mentioned. So this kind of individual development has led to today's patchwork quilt of applied codes and standards used for reporting. Without disrupting the established structures of the UNFC, could offer a long-term solution and a current coherent resource management system for Europe. Case studies, some of which are explained in more detail hereafter, might discuss these possibilities. And we provide further information on these issues also via the European Geological Data Infrastructure, which is called ECDI, and Sultan has mentioned that as well. Finally, to summarize, the geological survey organizations primarily act in the forefront of the industry and after business cases took place, or even after. Thus, besides the commercial projects indicates as UNFC green boxes, or to an extent, it's blue boxes labeled for exploration, the vast majority of the UNFC boxes correspond to the work of area of the geological survey organizations. In geo-area raw materials, detailed cases have been used to study where the UNFC and the URMS might be useful and where to further be adopted. However, the devil is in the detail. It requires much more than just a few test cases to implement the UNFC and the URMS across borders, and it might be a need for further developments in detail for geological, geophysical, and political issues. Let me finish this presentation by highlighting that the fellow colleagues of the different geological surveys have worked on these ones, to whom the credit belongs, and special thanks also to the UNECE Secretariat, in particular to Charlotte Griffith and Harry Tulsides, who have provided over the period of geo-area very valid feedback. Finally, thank you very much for your interest.
Thank you, Antje. Thank you very much. I believe we did get an overview of the 4 projects of geo-area, a joint effort of EGS members. Now we move on, and our next speaker is Tom Vilde from British Geological Survey. He will be talking about the perspective of use of UNFC in UK and its application by the National Geological Surveys. I believe, Tom, you are ready?
Yes, I'll just share my screen now.
Please do.
Okay, hopefully that's working. So I'm Tom Bide from the British Geological Survey, and I'm really grateful for the opportunity today to talk about our efforts in using UNFC to try and compile a national resource inventory. So this talk's based on the results of a study to create a resource inventory for the UK using UNFC, which was based on work undertaken for the Horizon 2020 funded Arama project in 2019. Now, at that time, not many countries, I think, within the kind of European sphere we were looking at had kind of developed this kind of resource inventory using UNFC. Certainly for us, this was really quite a new thing. So, I think we were starting from quite a low knowledge base. Although now lots of excellent examples exist, as people have been mentioned, there's a huge amount of momentum behind this, and a lot of those case studies and examples are going to be discussed today, which is really positive to see. But this is really about the methodology that we used and the learning, more importantly, I think the learning experiences that we gained. This was very much a first pass. I think it's fair to say we didn't get everything right, and undertaking such an exercise really did reveal how classifications like the UNFC can be subjective. It caused an awful lot of debate with colleagues both externally and externally to the nature of different classes. But I think this is really helpful, healthy and really useful in developing the UNFC amongst the geological survey community, and also, very importantly, ensuring consistency of approach. This particular exercise was a real challenge for the UK, because unlike many countries who have very well-established systems for national collection of data for minerals, the UK has no system in place and no real structure for such data. The UK is not alone in this, however, and many other countries face some similar issues. So I think what I'm going to talk about today, I think many people can probably draw lessons from. The BGS, like many other national geological surveys, however, does have access to a vast wealth of data from historic reports, modern exploration reports, our own work on mineral resources. However, these are often to different standards and use different criteria. So they're very difficult to collate and compare, which I think is, where UNFC really comes into its own. So what we did under the ERAMA project was trying to collate all the data that we had or could obtain on UK resources and reserves into a single national resource inventory. And this talk summarizes that process. So the very first thing we were concerned with was to ensure this consistency of approach. So the first thing we did was create several decision flow diagrams to kind of help this classification process. In total, we did 4 of these decision diagrams. There's one for each axis of the UNFC, and an additional one for conversion of modern CRIRISCO compliant data into UNFC. I won't go into these in a great level of detail, but if you are interested, they're available on the ERAMA website for the deliverables for work package 1. So very quickly, as you say, we have one for the E-axis, one for the F-axis, one for the G-axis, and finally, one for CRIRISCO compliant data. And you can see here the blue boxes represent sort of decision steps and the orange boxes represent kind of the classification itself. And eagle-eyed UNFC practitioners amongst you may note that this doesn't include subclasses. So for the UK exercise, due to the scale of the work and complexity, we only include the primary classes, i.e. 1, 2, and 3. This is obviously something that needs to be developed and improved upon, as we kind of improve our knowledge at EGS about kind of how to use the UNFC. So that's something to be aware of. So once we'd done all this, we started looking at the data itself. We found very quickly that the data types that kind of we, as a geological survey, were dealing with kind of fitted into 3 main types. And these were kind of modern industry data, historic reports, and also spatial data. And each one of these kind of require a slightly different approach and different issues associated with them regarding classification. So firstly, I'm just going to talk about modern industry data. So in some respects, this was kind of the easiest to deal with, really. There are already available a range of simple bridging documents to kind of do this. However, I think there's some very simple things that really people need to be aware of. The main one being data is often missing when you're going from kind of CRIRISCO compliant numbers to UNFC. Namely, the sort of what I would call the uneconomic portion. So this sort of uneconomic part is something that I think geological surveys and governments are really interested in, kind of, i.e. what may be a resource in 5 or 50 years' time, very long-term planning point of view. However, if it's currently economic, CRIRISCO won't capture that. That's not a problem. That's not CRIRISCO is designed to do. But it is a data gap with UNFC that we need to be aware of. Data is also very rarely captured for co and byproduct minerals, which can be an issue, especially when we're kind of talking about these technology metals, which are often fall into these categories. We also had issues with how to deal with cutoff grades when aggregating data for different deposits. Grades and cutoffs are often how resources are expressed with CRIRISCO compliant numbers. Again, very good reason for that. It tells you a great deal about the deposits themselves. However, when you aggregate these for a kind of large UNFC, say national study, for example, it's very difficult to kind of capture that information. So what we did was we converted everything into metal content. However, you do lose resolution here on the kind of deposit scale, something to be aware of. The next thing was historic reports. So geological surveys generally hold vast amounts of historic data. Now, these will often still be extremely useful, even in a modern context. However, it can be very difficult to manage. Important metadata is often missing, the location or number of drill holes, for example, grades, things like that. And also, the amount of certainty for different deposits will vary immensely, the amount of data you may need. For example, if you're looking at an epithermal gold deposit, the amount of data you need to have confidence in that is going to be very different from a sand and gravel one. So it's impossible to apply hard and fast rules in terms of how you classify this and the amount of data you have available. So the typical things that we kind of did were, for historical data, it's very likely the E and F axis will be E3 or F3 because the technical, economic, and social considerations that were true at the time are very unlikely to still be relevant. We've also occasionally used the category of F4 here for historical data for regional studies where individual deposits may not have been specified within larger regional areas. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about these kind of examples, which aren't deposit specific, on my next slide. Similarly, with this historic data, the G-axis will generally be G3 because it's quite low confidence. However, in some cases, the G category may be G2 if adequate drilling or ground investigation has taken place. Similarly, in some cases, it may well even be G4 if the geological evidence is insufficient for the deposit type in question. You know, and this kind of goes to show, again, often geological evidence based for historical data can be unclear, which can make classification really difficult. And when in doubt, we've generally applied the lowest confidence category to do that. So finally, there's the issue of spatial data. And what I mean here is data that's not project specific. It may, for example, be the result of prospectivity analysis, or in the case of what we're used to dealing with in the UK example, is resource areas based on mapped geology. Now, we've extensively used these in the UK because there is we have this absence of project-specific data. And I mentioned this before, we just don't have a lot of reporting of a lot of data for a lot of different projects. And if there's no public reporting of industry data, and you get this in a lot of places, especially with things like aggregate and industrial minerals, this approach, I think, is the only real viable alternative to fulfilling these data gaps. The results of such studies are quite difficult to integrate into the UNFC system, as it's principally designed for examining resource quantities at that deposit level. However, the UNFC is flexible enough to accommodate this. I think it just takes a little bit of care, I think. We've pretty much always attributed these kind of resources to the 334 or 34 classes due to the kind of low levels of confidence in all three axes when dealing with these kind of very large geographic areas. The difference between F3 and F4, very specifically, I think will depend on whether specific projects for which we don't have any data, for confidential or whatever, have been identified within these larger regional areas. So, you do get the juxtaposition where there's a project in there, but you just don't know anything about it. And, that can cause confusion. I think this is something that, we struggle to deal with a little bit. But again, I think using these large regional areas are really useful to kind of plug those data gaps, especially with those lower confidence numbers. So the results, I didn't expect you to take all this in, but you can see there's a lot of numbers and a lot of different classes and a lot of different commodities. So this is the table we got once we classified everything we had to UNFC. Again, this is available in the Irama deliverables, and this is going to be used for our input into the Mintel 4EU project. So what we now have here is effectively a standardized, harmonized set of data for the UK that we can provide to these larger European data portals now, which I think for us at least is a really big step forward. So to conclude, I think one thing we came to the conclusion with, there's no hard and fast rules that can be applied to UNFC. Its strength is that it's really flexible. However, this sometimes means subjective decisions do need to be taken, which means consistency between practitioners, I think, is key here. However, tools like these flow decision diagrams can really help with this. I think issues do remain about how this can be effectively used for national level reporting, such as how to deal with things like non-project specific data, aggregation, metal contents, co and byproducts, things like that. And I haven't really mentioned this, but I want to say the role of the competent person, I think, is that I don't think it's been really fully defined for use by organisations like Geological Surveys for these kind of national resource inventories. However, I think that's something that is being developed and thought about, and I think full guidance on that is going to be forthcoming soon. So finally, just looking to the future, I think significant issues remain with data gaps. UNFC is an excellent classification system, but it can't solve all our resource data issues. We need to still make sure we continue to invest in exploration and research, often for these new technology metals, which may have not been considered in previous historic work. And also, such inventories as are presented here is only the first step, really. Now we've got these, we can really start to think about how these data can be used in a resource management context, which I think, is the next step. And that's going to be really important to kind of moving this forward and moving to these, more sustainable sourcing solutions. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you very much. We believe this was quite extensive based on the UK and also the experience from the EU projects. We are moving north to Norway, and I would welcome Kari Asli. She will present the UNFC work in the Mintel for EU with a Norwegian case study. I believe you are ready.
Yes, I'm ready.
The floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you. So good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for the opportunity to talk about the work that we are doing on UNFC in Mintel for EU. As you have heard in this session, there's a lot of things going on, or you will hear here, and that we are practicing to get even better in using and understanding the UNFC system. Today, I'm going to give you a brief overview of the work that has been done in Mintel for EU and what we're planning to do in the project. And at the end, I will give you a quick look into one of the UNFC cases that we have been doing in Norway the last year. It's not a dimension stone case that's mentioned about Antje, but it's a national case on phosphate that we haven't shown you before. So next slide, please. So why are we doing this? It's clear that the geological surveys need a common tool to be able to aggregate resource information. And we wanted to test if UNFC is a tool that can be used by geological surveys to evaluate a country's known resources. And we also wanted to see if the UNFC system can provide Europe with a better system for harmonization of mineral resource data, both nationally and across Europe. Next slide, please. In Mintel for EU, we are doing this by gaining experience through case studies. We have done 22 case studies in the project on different resource types, in different countries, and on different levels, like national, regional, and local. You can see the table here with the case studies that we have done, and some of them are presented here today. And others you can see at the sides of this slide. The pictures might be a bit small, like I see now, but anyway, it's a good range of different case studies that we have been doing. Next slide, please. So what we have experienced from these case studies is that geological surveys, of course, can do UNFC on raw materials, and it's also clear that the partners at least in Mintel for EU, have quite different levels of experience. And this is increasing, fortunately. And we also see that the approach and the methods vary quite a lot from case to case. Some partners or some case studies you can do the CRIRISCO bridging, and while others must start more or less from scratch. So it's also quite clear that we need a stricter guideline. Another issue that we have seen when the geological surveys have been testing UNFC is that data availability and responsibility can be a challenge, because not all geological surveys have the responsibility or the data availability to be able to classify the E and X axis properly. The case studies that we have done will be compared, and there is clearly a need to identify the obstacles, data gaps, and harmonization issues. Next slide, please. From Mintel4EU, we will deliver a report with a case study review and with some practical guidelines of flow sheets. This will, of course, build on the previous project like the Orama project. The project and the report will also include all the case studies that we have done. Even though these case studies are good, we think it's important to remember that not all of them will be best practice, because the purpose of each case study was to test if surveys can do UNFC and to gain experience. But of course, we will extract the experience from the case studies into the guidelines that we're preparing. We will also deliver a report on harmonization issues, data gaps, and challenges. And in addition to this, we have also started to prepare a pilot on visualization of UNFC for the EGI. And in this slide, you can see 2 examples of this, one from Austria and one from Finland. Next slide, please. So now I want to jump to one of the case studies we have done in Norway. The Norwegian national case study on phosphate is done by 2 of my colleagues, and the work is also done in cooperation with another GeoEra project, FRAME. So apatite of igneous origin is the most prominent phosphate-bearing mineral in Norway. And we have several known deposits and occurrences. And as you can see on the map on the left, they are located either in the southern part of Norway or in the northernmost part of Norway. And some of the resources have been well known for years, while others are less known. Next slide, please. For the project that is presented here, we used the flow sheet that was made by the Orama project team. Only 2 of the deposits have your compliant resource estimates that could be used for bridging. This is the Kodal and Øygrei deposits. Other deposits have resource estimates that are non-compliant and are not done according to classification standards. So bridging is not an option for most of the phosphate deposits in Norway. For the classification, we have used both published and unpublished data, like geological reports, articles, company reports, and more, mainly focusing on the quality and performed activities in the various deposits. And we have also looked into the area plans at local level. At the bottom here, you can see a table from 2 of the deposits, Kodal in southern Norway and Misverdal in northern Norway. For the Kodal deposit, which is an apatite and titano-rich deposit, there were investigation by a Norwegian company between 1959 and 1984. And this included more than 58 drill holes, beneficiation tests, and apatite resource estimates. In addition to this, it has recently been drilled by a new company and reported. And so we could use this as a basis for bridging between York and UNFC. For the Misverdal deposit, which is an apatite-bearing alkali clinopyroxene complex, this has been mapped and sampled by the surface by NGU. There have also been processing lab experiments, including flotation, high-intensity magnetic separation, and acid solubility. The Misverdal UNFC was thus done based on non-compliant data, so we could not use bridging here. Next slide, please. This table summarizes the UNFC classification of apatite deposits in Norway. The most mature or most developed area is the Bjerkreim-Sokndal in southernmost Norway, where exploration companies are active at the moment. Earlier, about 10% phosphate content in apatite was used as a rule of thumb for a commercial viable deposit. But the trend is that the number is decreasing as new technology make it easier to extract and refine the products. In addition to the deposit that you see here in this table, there is also other potential phosphate resources with the unknown size in Norway, which we haven't included here. Next slide, please. So to summarize my presentation, Mintel for EU have shown that UNFC is a tool that can be used by geological surveys to evaluate a country's known and potential resources. And the UNFC system can be used to provide better harmonization of mineral resource data nationally and across Europe. But it's clear that we are at a starting point at establishing a more harmonized system, and stricter guidelines are required. And this is also mentioned by both Tom and Antje earlier. So we are therefore welcoming new projects and initiatives on UNFC that can build on our work and experience, the way Mintel for EU have learned from previous projects. And I think this quotation from one of the case studies is quite describing. So I think we just have to take it step by step and project by project, and finally I think we will be there. Next slide, please. Yeah. So by this slide, I would like to say thank you for your attention, and if you have any comments, you're welcome to address them to me.
Thank you, Kari. Thank you, Kari, especially for the conclusions, what is needed for the future, how this can be shared and what can be done. I believe very valuable. I did notice the very lively the chat discussion. I believe this would be also ongoing, but we'll move on with the program itself to see the UNFC case study, Rare Earth Elements Exploration Prospects and Secondary Raw Materials in Sweden by Erika Ingwald. Erika, you are ready?
Yes, I'm ready. Thank you so much.
The floor is yours.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Do you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah. So thanks for giving me the opportunity to present this case study. And thanks to Harry and Charlotte and David for this fantastic week that we've had. I think we can go to the next slide directly. So we did this project in the framework of Mintel for EU, which is a GeoEra project that you've heard about already. And Sweden took responsibility for the REEs in this project, since the REEs are the most critical raw materials on the EU critical list, and Sweden is one of few EU countries who actually have known REE resources. So therefore we decided that we will try to test, to classify those deposits, the most known deposits, with UNFC. So we choose to study 3 projects of different character and maturity. I will go into them shortly. And one thing that we wanted to test is how to do UNFC classification based on available public data only. Also we wanted to apply the Nordic guidance document that we developed a few years ago, and to use the Orama cookbook for how to bridge between the CRIRISCO codes and UNFC. So next picture, please. So the 3 projects that we studied was one up in the north in Kiruna, Malmberget, where we have big iron ore mining operations going on, where LKAB, the state-owned company, has decided to extract REEs from the apatite waste that this mine is generating since 100 years back, but they are doing it on falling waste. The second one is Norra Kärr, down in the south center part of Sweden. That's also a mature exploration project, but no mining is going on there now. This project has a quite complicated permitting story with the grants and appeals. And then the third one, the Olserum project, which is also an exploration project. It's been explored for a range of commodities since the 50s, so it's a well-known area, but it's in the last years that it's been interesting for REEs, and it has a quite unique permitting situation. So these three, they differ a lot, and we wanted to look into the three of them to learn actually how to classify them. So next slide, please. I'll start with the Ulcerum project. The unique thing about their permitting situation is that two companies hold more or less identical exploration permits. And that's, I think it's the first time in Sweden that has ever happened. And it's more or less impossible, but they came in with the application at the same time. So then the law says both of them has to get this permit. So that's going to, I think, complicate their future if they don't decide to collaborate. It's a heavy rare earth project, and the REEs are mainly found within monazite and cenotype in metasedimentary rocks, and those minerals have straightforward known processing methods to get the REOs out. And as I said, the mineralization is well known since the 50s. And one complicating thing here is that change of ownership of the company since the last technical report was done in 2013, and also that the NI 43 was improved after this report was done. So then you could have a discussion whether this report can be used or how valid it is. But we decided to use it and decided to be transparent on when it was done and all that. So the key for us as a survey is to compile the information that is out there and then be transparent with it. So next slide, please. The Norra Kärr deposit. It's also a heavy rare earth project. This one is very low in uranium and thorium, and it's unusual in that sense. Many rare earth projects in the world have a lot of uranium and thorium in them, and Sweden has, I think it's 2.5 years ago now, it was decided that it's not allowed to extract uranium in mining. This law will be reviewed in a few years' time, so we'll see if it stands. But this is the situation now. Anyway, this project is low in uranium and thorium, so that's a good thing with it. This one had a really complicated permitting history. At one time, it was granted a mining concession, but several appeals has been in play, and it's been to the government and it's been to the highest court of appeal, and then pushed down to the mining inspectorate. So the company still awaits its final permits to take the next step towards environmental permitting. This project really highlights the challenges concerning the permitting processes in Sweden and the different concerns around land use. So this one, if we put it in a cube, in the UNFC cube, it would have been bumping up and down the axis along the way. And complicating factors here are the Water Framework Directive and the Natura 2000 rules and how to apply them. So that's an interesting thing with this object. Anyway, the REs are concentrated in the silicate eudalite, and the process of extracting rare earths from this mineral has been tested on laboratory scale, but not on full scale yet. So they have some work to do before they know how the feasibility goes. but it's a well-known deposit, and it's classified also with NI 43. Okay, so let's take the last one. The REMAP project, as I told you, the LKAB company is a state-owned mining company. They have ongoing mining of iron ore since more than 100 years, and they recently secured their ore base for another over 40 years, actually, more, so at least until 2060. And in there, they have the falling waste from their operations. It has an amount of rare earth that could cover 30% of Europe's REE need. Not saying anything now about which of the REs in particular that they will cover. They will have, so they are going through a total industrial makeover, where they are going to start to produce DRI, directly reduced iron with hydrogen, and a lot of other things are going on. And they are also going to produce fertilizer and gypsum from this mining waste. So to make this project to improve the classification here, we should include also those products in a case study, but we didn't do this now. So anyways, that process to take out both REOs and phosphorus for gypsum and mineral fertilizer is quite a complicated process to put together. The different steps have been proven to work, but to do all of them together in an integrated full-scale project is something that they are developing now. And they have an investment plan, so their plan is to start to produce in 2027. But they also have challenges with the permits, since their appetite works that they need to get the appetite out of the waste is planned on the two mine sites where the entire sites are under revision for their environmental permits. And they also have a PERC report in progress, but it was supposed to be published now, but I think they are a bit delayed with that. But we took most of the information from the company's webpage, and also from a number of scientific papers and reports that the survey has done previously. So the next slide, please. So we found bridging between CRIRISCO and UNFC is fairly straightforward. The Orama cookbook was very useful for this. However, we know those three projects very well and their history and the people involved. So it became obvious to us that in early drafts, we omitted information that for us is sort of common knowledge in Sweden. But to a third party, this information can be unknown. And it can also be quite valuable and even crucial. So we'd like to thank GTK for invaluable comments. We think that external reviews improves the classification immensely. We also contacted the three companies to get their feedback on our classification and to secure the quality of work. And our assessment of the respective projects, it correlated with that of the companies. But I still think that it's valuable to have a third party to look into the classification, since both you and the company knows the project really well, and you miss to share information that might be important for someone, for an outsider who wants to know more about the project. And also, one outstanding question for us was to know how to handle a project that has been transferred to a new owner, and if the new if no CRIRISCO reports haven't yet been published by this owner. But our take is to be transparent and to communicate the situation. And also, of course, the date of the CRIRISCO, existing CRIRISCO publications, since CRIRISCO codes can be updated. And our conclusion is that it's perfectly possible to classify according to UNFC based on publicly available information. Also, if there are no CRIRISCO reports, as long as you are transparent on the details and add your references and so on. And we also agree that this is a starting point, and the work can be inherited and improved by companies, for example, or by us ourselves. So I think that was my last slide. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Erika, very much, especially sharing the UNFC experience on deposits of raw materials, which we were hearing quite a lot during the whole week. Thank you. And I would announce the next presentation, UNFC and the case study and the guidance from Finland, from Pasi Eilu and Janne Hoka. I believe, Pasi, you will be presenting, so the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you very much, and thank you very much, Erika, especially on your comments. My presentation is quite a lot on the topics that already almost all of the previous presenters have shown. So that's sort of continuation. Let me see if I could get my thing on presentation mode. Just a moment. In technical. Right. Okay. So what's important in but the first place, of course, wish to remind those who already know of this, that our guidelines report based on previous work and of course on Finnish case studies is publicly available. So when in the next week all these presentations become available, you can just click on the link or copy the link on this slide and go and copy yourself our guidelines report. So plenty of our work is done in the auspices of the Mintel project, of course, but then also as sort of budget work by EuroGeoSurveys Finland. So the point really is here, I'm not covering practically at all the CRIRISCO compliant cases, but what is beyond. So when you can't use the bridging document, typically the information you've got is really of variable quality and quantity as well. Qualified person is not, most probably not there. QA/QC might be done, might not. We just don't know mostly. Plenty of what has been done, especially in the older reports, is just outdated or at least partly. And maybe the holder of the deposit has been changed and quite often more than just once. So we go in E, F, and G axis values somewhere in 3s and 4s typically. And then we might have cases that, yeah, part of the resource information is actually, you can use the bridging document, right? But there might be, let's say we've got the lithium deposit and there is a very recent national instrument compliant report, for example. So fine, we use the bridging document. But then for other potential commodities, we might just have an old report for niobium, tantalum, beryllium, for example, if this is a lithium pigment. Right, so for these other commodities, we just have to use some other UNFC categories. So we end up within a single deposit for different commodities, different UNFC categories. Right, and then, well, there was a CRIRISCO compliant resource done maybe 2002 or something, 2005, 2007. But this company who provided this CRIRISCO compliant resource left the deposit, and well, there might be a new owner, but that new owner has not released a new resource. So we can't anymore use the bridging document, but go into other UNFC categories, like exemplified here. And then we've got these typical industrial mineral deposits. Companies so often specialized in industrial minerals don't report the resources at all, unless it's required by the law of a country. So we might have some information, for example, from environmental impact assessment, even if it is a producing mine. So we can't straightforwardly use the bridging document, or if it's not mined, then yes, we go into some other UNFC categories. So all of these, we just have to go case by case. So take a example from West Central Finland. We've got this cobalt, copper, gold resource, and the resource estimate from 1984. So what was done then? Drilling in situ resource estimate without consideration of dilution block modeling. Beneficiation tests were done. Some test mining was done. Preliminary feasibility was evaluated. But what is not there is that there is no QP. There is some uncertainty in the location of data points. There is no QA/QC information, and naturally there is no permitting in place. So, and then what is outdated? Well, this is almost 40 years ago. So beneficiation, feasibility studies, ESG, and possibly also the chemical or chemical analysis are outdated. So we end in this UNFC codes 332, 333. As this is now again held by a company actively investigating it, maybe for the x-axis we could use 3.1. So there are plenty of these harmonizing issues and data gaps and challenges we have to carefully look at for each case. So it takes a fair bit of work for the evaluator, that is for us. what we really, how we can regard the old information, and of course keep out from forecasting by ourselves. So when doing this, it's really important to be transparent, consistent, and comprehensive to really give the basis if there is any uncertainty on what's on. Of course, there are plenty of cases where it's easy to show that there is so little information that we just use the 334, for example, or 344. Just as Tombide gave us some examples and told us. So it's plenty of this with this historic cases. It's about also what is the evaluator's competence to understand these things, really, what affects on what things have to be taken into account when you categorize according to UNFC. So and also to follow what's going on. When new data flows in from the company, what is company reporting today compared to last year, for example? So the annual updates are important as well, so that we don't rely just something that, oh, this was classified 10 years ago, we go with that. So we need human resources to work on this, to follow what is going on, what are the companies reporting, what is new, and what is seen as, okay, actually what was reported 5 or 10 years ago there was so much wishful thinking that we just need to downgrade, for example, or for some other reasons to downgrade and not always upgrade, whatever we would hope to. So that's from us for now. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pasi. I noticed a question in the chat from Sigurd. If you can briefly respond. I do not understand your comment that the UNFC is used when the quality is poor. There is always a quality requirement, and the UNFC is no different, but requires a broader set of consideration than geological definition. Asi, can you respond on that, or?
I didn't get it. I have to see. It's now an issue with
in the chat.
Yes,
in the chat.
Yeah. Let's.
So, what is your comment when you said? What is your comment when you said that the quality is poor? The UNFC is used when the
quality. You mean the report? You mean the reporting quality? Yes.
Well,
reporting quality or quality
or
of,
a data. Yeah, data.
Data. Maybe it's the quality of data. Well, the point here is the QA/QC. What is QA/QC? Is the quality control that should be done by the organization that is reporting the information, that is reporting the data. And if it's not there, it by definition adds into uncertainty how well we can rely on this. So these are quite clearly defined in CRIRISCO compliant reporting rules. And these are issues that we don't see practically, we see practically never in old reports. Yes, sometimes there is something, but not so much. So that's the issue of poor quality of data. So we don't know if it's poor or good quality. But when categorizing, classifying according to any rule like UNFC, we just have to take that into account and be careful and not to put in, let's say, so-called too good categories.
Yeah, we need to be conservatives, and
exactly so.
I would believe geologists are in their nature a bit conservatives with that. Another question would be, if a UNFC classification cannot be assigned without disclosure of tons and grade, presumably in compliance to CRIRISCO and other standards, does that imply that all exploration targets are disqualified from UNFC classification?
If there is no resource, then you can't categorize.
Yeah, if they cannot be disclosed.
If they cannot be disclosed, yes, as well. If it's not public information, then I would be very careful to give out any UNFC category, because that would be disclosing confidential information.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It was very interesting. Also, quite a lot of traffic in the chat. We'll move further down a bit south from Scandinavia. And I'm very happy to announce Sebastian from the Austrian Geological Survey with the presentation on UNFC application to sand and gravel resources in an Austria pilot area. Sebastian, you are ready. The floor is yours.
Yes, I'm ready. Can everybody hear me and see my slide?
Yes.
On
everything is fine.
Mode?
Yes.
Okay. The nice thing about presenting on Friday afternoon on the last day of a 5-day conference is that I don't have to spend much time on the introduction. I don't need to explain EFG to you anymore. Everybody knows about UNFC enough, so I can start right away. What we've been trying to do is apply UNFC to sand and gravel resources. And yes, we are starting from scratch. Austrian gravel pit owners do not report resources. And it turns out that applying UNFC to sand and gravel is quite a bit different from applying UNFC to your usual gold mine or copper deposit. My next slide shows the differences. On the left side, this is supposed to be a copper mine, let's say. And before you start mining, there is an intensive exploration phase, and there are technical feasibility studies performed. You don't have that for sand and gravel. Nobody studies the technical feasibility to dig up gravel. And nobody drills through the gravel bed every 2 meters to explore it. And the question was, does this automatically always mean that the gravel deposit has to be classified as G4 without exploration data or F4 without feasibility studies? And I want to show you that this is not necessarily the case. You don't always have to go for G4 and F4. Another important difference is that the traditional approach is project-based. UNFC would look at one site and look at one mining project. And what we're trying to do is we want to classify an entire river terrace, for example. Yes, there may be a gravel pit there, an active or a former one, but it may also be untouched, and we still want to classify it. This is a bit crazy. I know that people say you can't do this. You cannot map quantities to UNFC if they have not been reported by the project owner. And if there's no project and no project owner, you can't classify it. I don't agree with that totally. I want to show you that there may be a way to still do this. And we have modified the traditional approach a little bit. We actually use an approach that has been developed by the Norwegian Geological Survey, and it makes use of land use data and spatial plans, which are always a very strong issue when it comes to gravel excavation. So here's how we derive the E values. First of all, at the top, an active pit will get E1 because the permit is in place. Safeguarded areas also get E1 because these areas are set aside for future mining. And if you apply for a license, you're very likely to get it. Down at the bottom, E32 is given to areas where mining is prohibited by law, these exclusion zones. And in the middle, you can have conflict areas where different land use interests exist and may collide with gravel excavation. And either you're outside these conflict areas and you get E2, or you're inside and you get E3.1 until you resolve the conflict, and then you may upgrade to E2. And the next thing is the F values. And I know that the debate is still going on how to do this properly. The views are actually quite diverging, but this is how we propose to do it. A mature project gets F1 at the top here. At the bottom, an area where there is no project development gets F4. Exclusion zones happen to be this, but we give it F4 because there is no project development. And in the middle, it really depends on the proximity to markets. If the gravel resource is near the market, we give out F2. I come from the city of Vienna, and Vienna is very hungry for gravel at the moment, and any gravel bed outside of Vienna is constantly at danger of being exploited. These areas are really, or can be looked upon as projects in the waiting. And so we give those F2. And if you're far from the market, we hand out F4. Although I know some people would hand out F3. And the magic number to draw the line between near market and far from market in Austria is 30 kilometers. That number is based on economic assessments by companies. This can change actually quite quickly if a politician decides to a highway to be built in the country somewhere because he wants to drive his Porsche to his villa, then suddenly market proximity changes and you have to reevaluate. This slide is about the G-axis. How well do you know the volumes of your gravel deposit? The volume is given by the extent in X and Y and Z directions. And the G-axis looks at the error associated with the volume, but the error associated with X and Y is actually negligible. The extent is so large, 10 kilometers, that your mapping error, maybe 1 meter, is negligible. And what really counts is the error associated with your thickness estimate. So this is how we derive G1, 2, 3, 4. The class breaks are actually given by UNFC, 90, 50, and 10. Okay, well, let's go into our pilot area and apply all this. I've chosen an area in Austria with a high demand for gravel, but there also is a lot of gravel. There are 6 different river terraces here, and the dots, the colorful points here, show the mining sites, the gravel pits, active or formerly active. And I only show you this because at those points, we know something about the quality of the material. we know what the gravel was used for, either for concrete or for road construction. And this quality, I will come back to this issue later. This is the information for the volumes. This is a thickness model for the area. In Austria, we're quite lucky to have thickness models for just about every large sedimentary basin or valley. And so this gives you information on thickness or on volume. It doesn't tell you about the accuracy, the uncertainty associated with your thickness estimate. And this is why I've plotted these pink dots. They are boreholes, and at each borehole site, we know the true value of thickness. And comparing this to the predicted value, predicted by the model, we can find out about the deviation and derive the uncertainty for our g-axis. This is a map of the land use data grouped into 4 categories here. The gray is the no-go areas, the off-limits, and the pink are the possible conflict areas. And for the classification, you have to work together with the spatial planners. They tell you which designation falls into what category. For example, Natura 2000 areas, they consider as conflict areas where the conflict may be resolved and it's not an exclusion zone, and others are. So this classification comes from the spatial planners. In this study area, 75% of the surface of all the gravel is off limits, and only 23% are areas where mining is likely to proceed without conflict. And this is the ENF values. I've covered this already, and again, 3.1 in conflict areas may become E.2 if you do an impact analysis, which comes out positive. Okay, and this is my final result. These are the EFG classes, the spatial distribution of these classes, and this is the volumes associated with each of the class. And you can see that I have 2 columns here. One is the volume of gravel, which is suitable for concrete, and the other one is gravel suitable for road construction. This is where the quality comes in. So you do really aggregation of your volumes depending on your usage of the material. And this is it. This is the final result. EFG classes, where are they and how much volume do they offer? And I want to stress at this point that I am not a competent person who is evaluating volumes before they are reported to the stock exchange. I am the one who comes up with these numbers, and I only provide them to regional authorities, provincial governments, people who need to take decisions on the next infrastructure project. And they are, it turns out, very happy and very keen on getting their hands on these data. So conclusions, I've shown how it could be done to classify gravel resources according to the UNFC. I propose a way to derive EFG codes at a regional scale. It's a GIS-based approach using spatial planning data and geological data. The results are compliant with the current definitions. So you should be able to compare the results to somebody else. And again, this is not a reporting to the public domain, but it's an assessment for authorities and governments. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you, Sebastian. I believe you really made a thought-provocative presentation, taking such a large area and choosing the selection criteria for the classes and each of those. I believe this work will continue with a lot of discussion also in the future. The limitation and the usage of UNFC, quite a refreshing, interesting perspective. So thank you for that. We would move on with the next presentation. Zoltan is coming back again together with the co-author Gabor Kovac, presentation on Hungarian progress on UNFC. Zoltan, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Slavko. Good afternoon again. Now I am sharing the screen and hopefully it works. Yes. Can you see?
Yes, perfect.
Thank you. So, ladies and gentlemen, again, in this presentation with my colleague Gabor Kovac, we report on the past and most recent UNFC activity of the Mining and Geological Survey of Hungary, mainly with focus on new legislation and deeper classification methodology. Between 2012 and 2020, the modernization of the mineral resource inventory was established with mapping between the national and international reporting systems and UNFC. Based on it, we could provide bridging, we organized stakeholder consultations, we have prepared a guidance and published our results. This activity supports our goals to update national data sets for mineral raw materials in UNFC. Based on this experience, we can go deeper into the UNFC classification with using many relevant data of the inventory of mining areas with permitting stages and inventory of mineral resources that are official data sets. Due to the harmonized terms and links between the national classification, the CRIRISCO reporting template and UNFC, and thanks to related results that were presented annually in Geneva, the project has matured enough to extend the content of the related implementation government decree of the Mining Act. The amendment, so the modified government decree contains clear description of the resource and resource categories for the used traditional Hungarian classification system that is similar to the Russian one. And also for CRIRISCO terms and for UNFC categories too. And this new legislation came into force in December of 2020. Otherwise, oil and gas companies report changes in volume of commodities and exploration according to SPR PRMS, and in the practice for non-energy minerals, the reporting form with reference on UNFC categories is also in use, so data collection and management in UNFC will be easier. Regarding competency, there is also a legal requirement for the necessary involvement of a competent person, national expert, and for validating data by these experts for changes in volume and exploitation. In the last years, on international forums, selected results of the Mining and Geological Survey of Hungary were presented for different commodities. Here you can see the key for solution. Traditional Hungarian classification categories according to the FGU-GKZ guideline and taking into account complexity of the deposit can be harmonized with CRIRISCO terms. Then based on CRIRISCO UNFC bridging and application of modifying factors, we arrive to the UNFC categories. Based on it, for example, for the western part of Hungary, mineral resource data can be presented in the original classification, then in CRIRISCO without modifying factors, then with modifying factors, and finally in UNFC. This tool supports resource management and raw material supply. We can go directly from the traditional Hungarian classification to the UNFC tool. If we use the details of the database, including mining plots with different permitting stages, the UNFC E and F subcategories can also be considered or identified. The mining plot can be operated if all the related permissions are available. One of the most important type of permissions is the technical operation plan that integrates the decisions of environmental and other co-authorities. And finally, the social acceptance is also achieved due to the public hearing that is obligatory. A mining plot might have approved technical operation plan for extraction, or mines can be suspended or closed without technical operation plan. Stages of mines like active, suspended or closed, and exploration areas are also recorded in the inventory. In some cases, the consideration of the reason of suspending stage of a mine is challenging, but this table shows the most important cases in the practice with application of the UNFC E and F categories. We have selected andesite for a case study on national level because these volcanics as crash stones have importance in the infrastructure development, mainly regarding railway constructions. The map below shows briefly that these volcanics are situated mainly on the northeastern part and on the southern part of Hungary. On these nice hills, many of them are famous wine regions, there are dozens of mining plots and closed mines, and the exploration potential is also significant. In the table, you can see some examples for mining plots with or without technical operation plan, or the mine is closed. So according to the previous table, E and F categories can be identified. G1 and G2 categories are also identified and derived from the traditional classification. E plus B and C go to G1 and C2 goes to G2, taking into account also that these construction raw materials have no high complexity. It shows that mineral deposits as viable and potential viable project can be classified and ranked according to economic and social viability, feasibility, and the level of confidence. Here it means geological knowledge. Table for most volcanic regions shows that most projects economically viable, the feasibility confirmed, and there is high level of confidence. There are only few projects where additional reports are needed to increase geological knowledge. Recently, there are no exploration areas for andesite, and few closed quarries exist. Active andesite quarries strongly contribute to the raw material supply, but legal constraints and other earth resource utilizations as competitive land use elements are serious limiting factors. To supply the increasing infrastructure development, mining need more space for quarrying, but extending recently active mines and establish new mining plots are facing to a 32% full limitation and 58% partial limitation for prognostic areas. These factors, like nature conservation, cultural heritage, administrative borders, with local land use plans, hamper the access to minerals. Putting information on a graph, regional distribution shows well the potential sources of andesites and different readiness or stages of recorded projects. There is no doubt that this approach and the UNFC is a powerful tool for resource management and decision making, but full and partial limitations for recent and future mining need to be underlined. As a summary, MBFS project between 2012 to 2020 have achieved objectives to establish the modernization of national inventory for mineral resource and geothermal energy with using the UNFC. Results, publications, and amendment of legislation with UNFC support the application of UNFC. MBFS updates inventories of mineral resources and mining areas, and UNFC is applied. Reporting forms are available with UNFC alignment. Recently, UNFC identification is the task for the MBFS. Methodology is supported by the inventory of mining plots and inventory of mineral resources. And these data sets help to achieve the detailed classification. UNFC works in 2021 have importance to support strategic documents for mineral resource management. The future plan is to serve proper data sets and visualization of UNFC information for raw materials in accordance with the growing need for national and EU level data management in a proper management system for raw materials and provide data for limiting factors. So finally, thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Zoltan. Thank you very much. Very, very interesting. Another case on construction minerals, crash stones, and overview on the progress in Hungary. Thank you again. With this, we ended with the presentations on minerals. Unfortunately, we don't have the next presentation, which would be a bit of UNFC and groundwater resources. But we have with us Serge van Gezel from Dutch Survey, who would present us a talk entitled Hydrogen Technology Collaboration Program, Underground Energy Storage and UNFC. So moving to the energy storage part. Serge, you are ready?
Yes, Slavko, I hope you can hear me.
Perfect. Yes, everything fine? We go.
Okay.
The floor is yours.
I will go to my slide pack. I hope you can see the slides. Thank you. Thanks a lot for UNECE for inviting me also to have this talk. And I will talk about underground hydrogen storage and the application of the UNFC, at least the relation to that, specifically the part on injection projects for geological storage. First of all, on hydrogen, well, hydrogen is a substance that we already use quite a lot in as a feedstock for industry, but not yet that much for energy. But we can see in the future, and many projections show this, that hydrogen is going to become a major energy factor in the energy system. And we can also see that this is also related to power generation, buffering, and also heating and power for buildings. So we can expect variable supply by green hydrogen and electrolysis, so from renewable sources like wind and sun, and also variable consumption in terms of heating and power. So this is very important. We need probably large amounts or large-scale storage for hydrogen, and there the subsurface can be an important factor. Just to show the comparison, because many countries and regions are now assessing the potential need for underground hydrogen storage. This is still in an early phase. We can see for natural gas, which is being done quite extensively in Europe and across the globe, we can see that this is done for balancing heating demand, backup power generation, also for our arbitrage and import, making sure that import dependency is always covered. There is in the global scene, there is about 10% of all demand for gas is available in storage. So that is a rather large amount of 483 billion cubic meters of storage volume. In Europe, that percentage is even higher. It's about 20 to 22%, and that is almost 105 billion cubic meters. So now how can we look from that perspective of hydrogen? Hydrogen is going to possibly becoming a very important factor that is comparable to natural gas, although the production is more variable. So storage will be very important. And if we take the same assumptions for from natural gas, the percentage is 10 to 20%, we can see that the storage volume for hydrogen can become quite large, even possibly larger than what we have for natural gas at the moment. That depends on which scenario you follow. So where can we store hydrogen in the subsurface? Well, typically salt caverns are being investigated, and they are already a proven concept, yet they need to be tested and demonstrated for fast cyclic storage. So they are now applied for industrial storage. And then we have even larger volumes in gas fields, depleted gas fields and aquifers and other types of underground stores like lined rock caverns. These concepts still have to be proven. So it's a matter of assessing geological feasibility and also to do the piloting and demonstration. We must stress here that these technologies have very long lead times, about 10 to 15 years. So we should start really early and screen potential sites for doing these demonstrations, else we are too late. Several projects already investigate the possibilities for energy storage and hydrogen storage. You can see two examples here on the left-hand side. That's the ESMA project, where we have investigated all types of energy storage, like pumped hydro, but also gas storage and hydrogen storage and heat storage, existing sites and potential sites. And on the right-hand side, you can see an example of an assessment, a recent assessment of where we can find potential sites for developing salt caverns where you can store hydrogen. So the technology needs to be developed, and here we have now a new task under the International Energy Agency Hydrogen Technology Collaboration Platform, the Hydrogen TCP, and a new task is being established for underground hydrogen storage here. So the IEA TCP is a global technology network open to IEA members and non-member countries working together on cross-cutting topics. The objective is to advance the research and development and commercialization of energy technologies, and we work there together with a lot of projects that are conducted nationally and internationally. The Hydrogen TCP has already over 40 research, development and deployment tasks and analysis tasks since its establishment in 1977. These are multi-annual tasks, and currently this task is then a new task. And we are working together with 25 contracting parties and 6 sponsors globally, and a lot of them are in Europe. So the rationale for the new task is to that there is an expected increase in importance for hydrogen storage in the future, but the technology still needs development and demonstration. So the objective of the task is to prove the technical, economic and societal viability of underground hydrogen storage, and to accelerate pilots and demonstration for finally upscaling and commercialization of the technology. So we do that in various work packages where we're going to work together with a lot of projects and organizations, from academics to national, international R&I programs, including the Horizon 2020 programs, industry pilots and demonstration, and policy support stakeholders in the regulating and energy market. So we look at technical feasibility. So what are the challenges to establish this technology in the subsurface and above ground? Then the technology development itself with regards to the screening of suitable sites, and also to assess the performance and the classification. So that is very much linked to UNFC, of course. Then the technology deployment with pilots, and also how to set up the design and assess the risks, safety and monitoring. And finally, planning and efficiency, where we do the system integration, economics, look at the regulation and licensing aspects, but also the societal embedding and ethics. So the underground, the underground hydrogen storage, how does it relate to UNFC? Well, the working group for injection projects and geological storage, they have already set up a scheme specifically for CCS, CO2 storage, but also this is applicable to gas storage projects, and that could also include then hydrogen storage. So if you look at the various axes here, we have the economic viability, technical feasibility, and geological confidence. We can see under that all types of elements that we are addressing in the task of underground hydrogen storage under IEA TCP. So economic viability could address hydrogen market and production, volatility of production and use and the balancing, system integration and transport, but also the merit order of different technologies and sites, the regulatory framework, licensing, and also hydrogen quality and certification. The feasibility of a technical feasibility is really about the demonstration of the technology, and also to assess the safety and integrity and losses of hydrogen, the engineering concepts, and the portfolio screening and maturation of sites. And finally, we have the geological confidence axis, where we look at the mapping, exploration, and appraisal of sites, and also to assess the capacities and performance. And these elements will fill in, let's say, the elements that are included in the framework. So finally, this slide where we can look at what kind of things are currently happening. There are existing hydrogen storage sites for static storage in industry feedstock. They are existing in UK and United States, and these are typically in the E1, F1, G1 axis, of course. They are operational. Then we have pilot and demonstration projects in Austria, Argentina, the Netherlands, and in France, particularly. And these are, some of them are already established. So we think they fit in the middle part, the E2 up to E3 and F2 and F3 and the G1, 2, and 3 axis. And finally, we are also conducting a lot of characterization and screening projects under Horizon Europe, but also nationally, where we are looking at the F3, E3, and G4 and F4 axis. Especially, I would like to draw the attention to Horizon Europe call for a CSA for a geological service of Europe, where we are going to look specifically at all these elements and to bring that together in a European storage atlas, together with other types of storage, where we would like to address and investigate the application of the United Nations Resource Classification Framework, together, of course, with the other projects. So some takeaway messages. There is a need for large-scale underground hydrogen storage with the increasing share of hydrogen in the energy mix after 2030. There is still a technical feasibility to be proven, and the different technologies, salt caverns, gas fields, and lined rock caverns have varying technical readiness levels, but they need to be established around 2030. The IEA Hydrogen TCP aims to advance the research and demonstration of these technologies through global research collaboration. Mapping and screening and characterization of potential underground storage sites is conducted in various projects, including the Horizon 2020, Horizon Europe programs. And finally, we think that UNFC for injection projects provides a viable classification framework that can be linked to the screening of potential sites, both demonstration and upscaling, and to do the spatial planning, system market integration, and also the regulation and societal embedding. And we look forward to implement the framework together with UNECE. Thank you.
Thank you, Serge. Thank you, Serge. Quite a new topic. Many questions in the chat as well. So first I would ask organizers, do we need to finish at 5 o'clock or we can have a few minutes more? I would take
yeah, please. Yeah, we can go a little more. No problem.
Okay,
Sorry.
thank you. Thank you. So let's start with Serge. There are 3 questions for you. I would go one by one. How hydrogen can be produced in a deep water deuterium, which is within the active Philippine fault?
Yes, thank you for this question. So actually, this really addresses the possibility of having natural hydrogen occurrences, which is actually very limited, but it is being investigated. There are some projects investigating underground possibilities to produce hydrogen, but mostly hydrogen is produced through technologies from producing it from natural gas. That is steam methane reforming, for example. That is already a very much established technology. And the other one is electrolysis. I do not know really the part you mentioned here, but it would probably relate to natural occurrences of hydrogen that can be produced. So there is a summit in May or June, in May, on natural hydrogen formation. So I would really also would like to forward you to that summit.
Thank you. There is another one. It was noticed that there are no topics for LNG. Can you comment on that?
Well, the LNG is that's really an above ground technology for natural gas. So that is not really in our domain. But there is a database in the GIE that is showing all the potential and also the existing projects for LNG. I would like to stress here that liquid hydrogen is one of the main topics also to be investigated. So liquid hydrogen is going to become very important for global transport of hydrogen. And yeah.
Right. Well, a bit of open question, but I believe you can be quite sure. Can you estimate the reserves of hydrogen in any way?
Sorry,
So if you can estimate the resource reserves of hydrogen.
If we talk about natural reserves, that is being done now, but that's really in an early stage. So there is at least some projects, 1 or 2 projects that are doing this on a national level. I do not know exactly what this is, but it would be similar to assessing the reserves for natural gas. And if we talk about the storage capacity, yes, this is being done on the national level. So many countries have already assessed what is the potential for storing hydrogen, the working volume that you can establish. In the Netherlands, we have done a very extensive assessment, but also other countries like UK are doing this kind of work. So this is being extended, I think, also in the coming period for the CSA when we work on the Horizon Europe program for geological services for Europe.
Thank you.
If I could jump in there, actually, Serge, sorry, it's Dave McDonald, is that similarly to our renewable energy resources, you could predict and make an estimate of the amount of resources and volumes associated with a project that you're putting in place to generate either blue or green hydrogen.
Yeah, we can do that, certainly. And this is also, let's say, depending on the volume that you have in the subsurface, but also how do you engineer this volume. So the project, the above ground facility really defines how much volume you have for storage, let's say the working volume. And then you have also the non-active volume, the cushion gas volume that is remaining there that could be a potential reserve for later production again. But the working volume, that is the thing we assess, and that really depends on how many wells you put in place and how you do your pressure and productivity technologies. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. I also have here 2 questions which would go back more to minerals. The question is what is the optimal time frame for implementation UNFC system in the local national reporting system if it involves formal implementation decision, memorandum of understanding, appointment of implementation person, formation of expert group, selection of specific examples, and so on. That's the first question. And the second question, I believe that many of you can answer that, so I would encourage that. But I would also go to the second question, which says, should the work be done only by geological survey given specifics of institutional, national, and UNFC system? And I would actually start with this one. I would say no, it's not the exclusive domain of geological surveys. There are many practitioners, many organizations that would do this as well. It depends, in my opinion, mostly of the nature of the work, who is more or less involved in the reserve and resource estimation. But still, I would be looking for the other answer, the time frame. David, maybe you try, or?
Yep, sorry.
I'm sorry, I missed that. Solar, Slavko, the time frame for what exactly? For
Well, what is the optimal time frame for implementation UNFC system in local national reporting system when it involves so many steps, you know, in a frame?
I would say that, I mean, the recommendation I would give to any group that's looking at adopting the UNFC would be to consider it early. Look at all of the advantages that it can bring into your system, you know, and particularly looking forward to the types of advances that we're looking to put into the UNFC and UNRMS and benefits that they could provide you in the future. So, I mean, in short, I would say, you know, it was the best time to have started was yesterday, and the next best time to start is tomorrow, I suppose. So.
Yes, and I would just add that the project itself develops, and then therefore would also develop the classification, the numbers. I would say the numbers would go down in a very, very simple frame.
And if I could also add, I think that the regional approach as well that we've heard this morning from Africa, and I think what we've heard this afternoon is the importance of collaboration at regional level. That's really important. So if any country is thinking of applying the UNFC, to really reach out and learn from other countries, and I think we've heard a lot of that this week. So thank you, and thank you everyone for a fantastic session.
Yeah, I guess, I mean, to carry on with that is with the development of these international centers of excellence, I think those are going to be really key in expanding uptake within the regions. So
good. As a moderator, I would really thank for speakers for so many different cases, so many different commodities which were explored. I would also thank participants and the UNFC technical staff, interpreters, and particularly the Secretariat, David, Harry, and Charlotte. So with this, I would go back to you, David.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Slavko. Excellent session. So also thank yourselves, because it's one person that got missed there. You did a great job in moderating the event and putting together an excellent panel. So I mean, we're really ready to close now. It's been a very intense week of discussions here, and I hope everyone found them as enjoyable as I did. We hope the involvement of each of you going forward and continued development and implementation of the UNFC and UNRMS with these systems, I think we will be seeing a new era in sustainable resource management. Do have one quick update to the report that we've put up on the board there, which is in paragraph 94, just for a bit of clarity from the point of view of the Russian Federation. They wanted to have specifically the name of the tool they're working with, the Clean Energy Index, added to that. So reading that paragraph out, it now says, Mr. Igor Shpurov, first vice chair of the expert group, presented on the progress to establish an international center of excellence on sustainable resource management in Moscow. He outlined the goal of the ICE SRM Moscow to focus on countries of Eurasia. He also outlined a sustainability reporting tool, a clean energy index, allowing comparison of diverse energy projects on an equal platform, including the carbon footprint. So presuming there's no concerns about that, we'll make that adjustment as well there. I'm really happy to, are there anything else, other adjustments on there or comments?
Just the last point.
Okay, just the very last one. Okay, the report of the meeting was adopted subject to any necessary editing and formatting. So if there is anything that anybody notices that needs to be adjusted, we can certainly do that. Not any text changes now, but any editing or formatting that needs to be done. So thank you very much for that, Harry, for taking care of that. Thank you very much, Charlotte. That's an awful lot of work putting this report with the conclusions and recommendations together during the week. It's an awful lot of work, and appreciate the efforts the two of you have put into that. We had a lot of new people this year, new experts joining in the sessions. I think that's probably due to the virtual mode. So it's, you know, one thing that this format does bring is more flexibility to have people attend virtually, but we very much hope that we can have a session face-to-face next year, because it does add to the flavor of the meeting, gives us a chance for more side discussions on issues and perhaps a bit more depth into the conversations. I don't think it necessarily is going to preclude the virtual participation of people as well, though. So we may very well have a hybrid meeting next year, both virtually and in person. I'd like to thank all of the wonderful interpreters we had during the week. It's a very difficult job for them, and it's I know it's been very well done and very clear, at least the interpretation that I've listened to. We had a great deal of technical support from UNDP Istanbul and Ankara in Turkey. I'd like to thank them for that work. And as I said before, particularly would like to thank the UNECE Secretariat, all the technical people. An awful lot of technical work goes into preparing for these sessions with both Interprify and Zoom. So very much like to thank the technical people working on that, and very clearly Harry and Charlotte and Scott for all the effort and support they've given us over the year. But most of all, we need to thank all of the experts, because you're the people that are making this happen and implementing it. So, you know, go back to your places of business and work next week, and make sure that you bring up the meeting. Tell somebody there something about what happened this week, and spread the word about what work we're doing here with the expert group. And hopefully we can even expand further. So those of you who are having a holiday weekend this weekend, hope you enjoy it very much. Hope you all stay safe and healthy, and wish you goodbye and good luck until we meet again next year. Thank you very much. If I had a gavel, I'd hit my gavel.
Thanks, everyone. And thank you to our chair. Thank you, Dave. Fantastic chairing all week. Bye, everybody. Stay well.
Bye.
Thank you, Anil, and all the interpreters. Fantastic job. Thank you for everything, all your support all week. Really, really appreciate it. You've done a fantastic job. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Charlotte.
Thank you.
Please,
Thank you, Anna.
yeah. Please make sure you thank everyone in the team, and thank Ezra. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
And stay well.
You too. You too. All.
Thanks. Bye.
Yeah. Bye.